Hello, this is Linda Vettrus-Nichols, and do I have an amazing person to introduce you to, Garrison Cohen. Welcome, Garrison.
Hey, Linda. Thanks. This is really fun already.
Right? And we had a little fun before the recording going on too, didn't we? A little choking fun over there, Indian food. That was pleasant.
Thanks for
All
telling
right.
everybody about that.
Oops. Don't choke and tell. Oh, God. All right. So, Garrison, you have an amazing story of transformation, and I would love it if you would share that with everybody.
Hmm.
Where do I begin?
Yeah. Well, like many kids, I was born, and
Good job.
thank you. So, for me, from very early on, I was aware that
Mm,
people were not aware, and
wow.
it was really hard as a child
For sure.
with no understanding of what was happening, and yet a sense that this can't possibly be as good as it gets, because if it was, it wouldn't feel this way. That's all I
Wow.
knew.
Right?
All I knew is that this doesn't feel right.
Mm,
Um, I was aware of my parents, I was aware of people around me, and I
hmm
could feel how unaware of me they were. I could feel how unaware of each other they were. It was very confusing
Yeah.
because I just made it mean that there was something wrong with me,
Mm,
that I was
wow.
feeling all of these feelings. And what I would also notice is that I was feeling their feelings that they weren't feeling, because they weren't aware of their own feelings, and yet I was. So I would feel everything that they were feeling, and then wonder, like, why do I feel so terrible? Why do I feel so conflicted? Why do I feel so scared or lost or sad? And
Wow.
so it was very confusing. And
Yeah.
the one guiding light I had was quite literally a voice that I would hear inside of myself that would say, this can't be as good as it gets, because if it was, it wouldn't feel like this. And that's all I
Um,
knew. That was my compass.
yeah.
And I just knew that somehow I was going to have to figure out a path to where I could say, I don't know if this is good as it gets, but I'm
hmm
so happy that I don't really care if it gets better. Like, this is what I thought or felt or knew it could be. And that was from the time I was a child.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So that's the beginning of the story. When I was 8 and my little brother was 5, there was a night where we grew up in a suburb of Boston, and it
hmm
was a dark, snowy night in the middle of February. And we were watching TV in our den downstairs, or the living room. And that was back in the days where if you wanted to change the channel, you had to get the hell up off the couch, walk across the room, put your
Oh,
hand
you're not that old,
on the
are you?
big knob. Apparently, I am, because I remember this. And you'd put your hand on the knob and go ka-chank, ka-chank,
Right.
ka-chank to one of the 7 stations that you could actually watch back then.
Exactly.
See what was on. And I switched onto the I think it was the Friday night special, which was um the story of Moses. It was the 10 Commandments
Yeah.
on TV, the original one with Charlton Heston.
Right.
I wasn't feeling all that interested in it, and I was switching to the other channels. Oh, what else is there? But right in the moment that my hand was on the knob, here I see Moses standing at the gates of the city with his brother, and he's about to go walking off into the desert. And his brother says to him, Moses, why would you leave all of this behind? There's nothing out there. It's
Right.
emptiness, it's death. And Moses turns to him and says, I know not what force shapes my way, but my feet are set upon a path I must travel. And I'm standing there at 8 years
Power.
old, my hand on the knob, jaw dropped.
Right?
And, I know this may not be like Moses's actual quote, and this is probably Hollywood writers, but the sentiment of what they captured in that moment
Yes.
of the story of this human and the choice
Mm.
he was making and the trust that he was putting in something
Hmm.
so much greater than himself
Yep.
really impacted me.
Me too.
And I think in a way, it spoke to a part of myself that
Hmm.
said, I also don't know what force shapes my way,
Right.
but I do believe that my feet are set upon a path I must travel.
Yeah.
And it took me years to look back on that moment and start to have a sense of trust of like, oh wow, look at all of these illuminated stepping stones throughout my life where the message was keep trusting yourself, keep
Nice.
lifting, keep following these divine stepping stones that are being laid in front of you and
Hmm.
see what happens. And so that has really informed a lot of the choices that I've made in my life. And a lot of them haven't been necessarily logical choices as much
Hmm.
as they have been, I don't know what to tell you. This feels right on every level, so I'm going to see what
I
happens.
know. My thing is, you can't make up this shit. Somebody comes to you, something happens. So wild.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. And
Yep.
so my life has really been a journey and a path that has been set in place,
Hmm.
with that as the foundation of it.
Right.
Clearly, that's not my whole life story, but that was an integral part of of where it went from there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so a few little more snippets to, what made you who you are. Like you ended up going into film at one point.
So before getting into the film part, my very first public speech was significantly worse than most people's worst fears of their first.
Now,
And
where was it?
I'll tell you the story briefly. I was in
Yeah.
high school and I think I was a sophomore and I had to give my first speech in front of the room.
Hmm.
And I was nervous and I was unorganized and I had to do just a report on some subject and I hadn't eaten and it was sort of late in the spring and the room was really hot and the windows were all closed and I'm standing in front of the whole classroom with my note cards.
Right.
And in the very front row, the first desk in front of me was this big school bully
Yeah.
who was having a full-on conversation with the kid next to him in the middle of my speech, which is super distracting. So I said to him, "Would you please not talk while I'm giving my speech?" And so he turns to me and starts going, oh, like starts like brandishing his fist and telling me how he's going to beat the crap out of me right after class while I'm giving my speech. So I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm distracted. My cortisol levels are like going through the roof. And then I start to notice that there's like this sort of like fuzz, like black and white TV fuzz around the corners of my eyes. And it slowly starts just creeping in and in and in until I'm just looking through like this teeny little hole. And then as the hole almost starts to close up, the last thing I see are my note cards just up in the air and some other girl in front of me just like that
Oh
thing gonna
no.
fall on her. And I ended up passing out.
Right.
And then I realize that the teacher has said, "Oh my gosh, could two boys help him get to the nurse's office?" So the next thing I know, I'm being dragged down the hall by my wrists while two boys are laughing their heads off as they like bring me to the nurse's office. So that was my very first public speech.
Right.
Oh my God.
Public display was more like it.
Yeah, public display of an attempt at giving a speech is
There
probably
you
more
go.
accurate.
So
And it was, I felt I was embarrassed and humiliated, and
sure.
it was just a mess. But interestingly, as that summer approached, my mother had heard the end of a radio interview um, with a woman who had created a summer program, and all she knew was that it was about confidence for kids, and she was like, "You're going to this thing." What she didn't realize was that this woman had bridged connections with all of these underground schools that wouldn't be known for another decade or more, that
Wow.
were at the cutting edge of education, embodiment,
Nice.
positive thinking, like neurolinguistic programming, emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, embodiment, accelerated learning, and just so many amazing things. I actually came to find that Tony Robbins had been a facilitator at this program, before I had, been a part of it.
Wow.
And I got an education from some of the best speakers and facilitators in the world.
That is
So,
so
and
cool.
a lot of people I knew from that program would go on to be, famous facilitators and speakers.
Right?
So I actually had an entire education where I would go back for years and years until I was one of the leaders, leading on stage and being flown
Nice.
to around the world to
Right?
work with different groups around all of these amazing ways of building confidence and expressing ourselves and grounding in ourselves and being effective, productive, resourceful humans in the world in the most amazing ways.
So cool.
And so that was a huge education. And then from
Mm-hmm.
there, I went on to speak at colleges around the country and the
Nice.
world for many years. And I found that with all of the things that I had learned,
Mm-hmm.
I could keep an audience of, I think my biggest audience was about 2,500 people that I kept on
Wow.
the edge of their seats for an hour and
Nice.
45 minutes. And it was
So
effortless.
cool.
It was fun because I knew if the audience started to go off in this direction, I could adjust myself in this way and bring them back on.
Yeah. The
And
whole energy thing.
yeah, and
Very
time after
nice.
time, I would just crush it with these audiences, and it was really
Wow.
fun. During this time, I was also establishing myself as a filmmaker,
Uh-huh.
and really my passion was about telling stories that would have people say, "Wow, I never
Mm,
thought about it like that before."
right?
Gives me a whole new view on a very old subject that I thought I knew, and I guess I didn't. And it could have to do with anything. But the idea of helping people wake up to who
Right?
they are, to what they are, to what's possible in ways that they never considered before
Right?
was really exciting to me. And I went on to win, I think, about 24 awards in filmmaking in national and international film festivals for different
Nice.
things that I had created. My programs really continue to evolve. Um, and I noticed that as I create a new one, it sort of goes into the background and a whole new one comes up to the surface.
Right?
Right now, one of the things that's really exciting me is a program that I call the Satori Star. And Satori is the Japanese word for sudden clarity, insight, illumination.
Nice.
The direct translation literally means a swift kick to the third eye. So it's kind of like, poof, oh my gosh, I just realized, it's that kind of thing. And so what I do is I work with entrepreneurs on the Satori moments that have become
Nice.
the foundation of their work in the world. Because a lot of times it's said, it takes 10,000 hours to attain mastery. But what they don't say is that those 10,000 hours are basically made up by all of the Satori moments that happen
Exactly.
during that time to
Yeah.
get you mastery.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I interview I interview my clients with a professional videographer and draw out their passion, their brilliance, their boldness, their vulnerability, their heart, their just their wild edge cutting process or ideas or experiences, and
Nice.
I capture that on video, and I really follow it over the arc of the hero's journey. So we really get the very human, beautiful, passionate journey that they've been on through the course of their life. And then after that, I create a list of all of these beautiful, what's called B-roll, slow motion shots for
Mm-hmm.
the photographer to get of my client. And we shoot that, and we shoot it, them moving through their life, out at their favorite place in nature, interacting with their favorite people, just feeling them in motion. And we intercut that with the interview and add beautiful music into it so that people really get a multi-layered expression of who
Mhm.
this person is on so many levels and layers that it just creates so much trust and rapport and and really brings a sense of clarity around like, wow, I like this person. I feel this.
Yeah,
I think they can help me.
right? And you have that on one of the example on your website, and it's so beautiful. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah, let everybody know your website. We'll put it in the comments too
Thank you.
when
Yeah,
we
it's
share.
my website is the and when you go there, if you go under offerings and the Satori star is right there.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. So our true form is oneness. You came in connected to your oneness and you kept it going, and now you're connecting the rest of us in our own oneness and oneness with each other. I love it. Thank you so much, Garrison. This has been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, thank you, Linda.